Hi, it's Darren from SimNation again. Want to do a quick recap video and season preview video for WWPF, which is our Draft Day Sports Pro Football 2023 League here at SimNation. It's, of course, a Wolverine studio title. I highly recommend the game. If you're looking for a really good pro football simulator, it definitely is something that you should take a good, long, hard look at. Um, the league itself is interesting because we have a whole bunch of new coaches, and I think that they're beginning to bring some dynamic with them that will hopefully make this season a little bit more competitive. I will say any preview video is always going to start and end with Peedle. Um, he's the defending champion. He is really just a dominant force in the league. But I do think that some of the things I'm seeing may give him a little bit of competition this year. But of course, we'll see. He started slow last year and then just poured it on near the end of the season, of course, winning the title over Pops in the title game and really beating what I would say is probably the top three teams in the process, where he took out my Pittsburgh team, then took out DP's Jets in the AFC Championship game, and then, of course, took Pops out in the title game. So let's kind of dive into week one with some of the things that we saw. Um, so I'm going to back it up 1 week. Um, so uh, Green Bay is a team that was recently taken over by DWK. DWK is someone I'm pretty familiar with because he used to play bowl-bound college football in the GDCFL, which was one of our two leagues there. And he's also in the college game. He's a very thoughtful coach. I know from when he had, I think, Penn State, but I think that it'll be interesting to see how he does. He had some issues with his import, and I'm still looking at what that is. I think I know what caused it, and it was a point update that I made for week one. Week one is one of those weeks where it's really hard because you got to get under the cap space from the preseason. You've got to get to a maximum number of players of 53. So we do point upgrades, and sometimes those just don't work the way they're supposed to. So I think that's what happened. But thankfully, he managed to win. Probably not the way he wanted to, and he downed his AFC North rival in Chicago, 27-13. Seton had a really good game there. Probably the next game is the game I was most excited about. It's Pops versus Rick Sullivan. Both of these are really good coaches. Pops, of course, made it to the championship game last year. Rick had a very good season as well. And it was interesting to see how this might pan out. And of course, Pops won it late uh, with really good passing attacks. Sperry is a guy to keep an eye on throughout the season. But that 34-28 win is definitely a good win for Pops to open the season, especially against Minnesota, who I think really is the number two team in the AFC North. But when we talked about the preview, I'll talk a little bit more about the dynamic there. Atlanta is also a new coach as well. I think that's Steve, who joined us recently, and he got the New Orleans Saints in the first game of the year. A lot closer than I thought it would be. I actually thought Atlanta would win this one more outright. I'm not big on New Orleans by any measure of the stick. And of course, Schaefer, who is someone who I've criticized in the past, actually had a really good game with 422 yards. Um, if we look at this one real quick, I think Atlanta's quarterback had a really good game. Yeah, Howell, who is someone I'm pretty high on actually, completing 75% of his passes. That's a really strong start. But Atlanta gets the win. Doesn't matter how you win. It's just if you do. Carolina is a team to keep an eye on throughout the season. I really think in that NFC South, I'm pretty sure it's the NFC South. Carolina is probably the team to beat, but having Steve in Atlanta may change some of that. But what we saw out of Carolina is Zelensky is just, he's an outright stud as a quarterback. Really solid game. Only giving up 17 points. Zelensky completing all but four of his passes for 232 yards and three touchdowns. That's solid. So a great start there for I think that's Invisible Witness, if I remember correctly. So great start there. This was kind of a marquee matchup. It's Templar versus Dawn, Eagles versus Cowboys. In the past, this would have been Gary versus Templar. Dallas is a team for me to watch because they had a really good season last year. I think they're going to have a really good season again this year. Definitely was a very close game. And Templar just managed to pull away with the win. So really good start for Templar. Uh, the Giants are someone who I don't know what to expect out of them. They had a really good draft and good offseason. Washington is Udo. Udo is a really good coach. Of course, New York is Cable. And I didn't think that Cable had much of a chance in this one, and I was kind of spot on. He's got another season, I think, before the Giants are really going to be competitive, but he's definitely put them on the right path. Uh, Udo is just a phenomenal coach, and it showed here today. I really think that this division is going to come down between Dallas and Washington. But of course, Udo started with 44 points, held New York to 13. I am a little curious to see. Yeah, he started Allen. Um, New York's going to be interesting. They're still kind of retooling, but I really like the game out of Rose from Washington. I think it was one of the better games I saw. On the NFC side, the AFC had quite a few big results. Arizona versus San Francisco. This one was a little bit of shock to me. Stewart is probably hands down one of the best coaches in either the college or the football pro league that I've seen. I don't think he got what he wanted out of Hill, and a little shocked by the 38-14 scoreline. I expected San Francisco to win this one. I think Stewart's probably a little shocked too, but Taft had a really strong game, and Taft is that phenomenal rookie out of NC State who's just a game changer. So definitely, it's good to see he had a very strong game and definitely powered Arizona to the win. We'll switch over to the AFC now. First game is Kev versus Cleveland. I'm really high on Kev just in general. He's doing really well in the college game. He had a great offseason. Bio Eagle is, of course, Bio Eagle. He is a pretty phenomenal coach. I thought this one would be close. It's maybe a little bit farther out than I thought, but Murray just had a really good game for Baltimore, which definitely helped them to secure what is an early win against a divisional opponent. Uh, Up next is Pittsburgh versus Cincinnati. This one's lost a little bit of its luster for me, candidly, because Chris is no longer at Cincinnati. If anyone wants to join the league, Cincinnati's a really good team. I'll take a good hard look at them. I did expect Pittsburgh to win this one, probably not as much as they did. And of course, Pittsburgh is my team. Uh, and Pittsburgh just thumped them. 44-3. The defense did much better than I thought. They actually sacked the quarterback like some ungodly amount of times, like 5 or 6 times, with Hickson and Baines, who are two of my phenomenal linemen, just getting in the backfield constantly. Lackey's the rookie running back at Pittsburgh. I'm really expecting big things out of him. So it was really good to see him start the year off pretty well. Uh, the next game again is against two. A lot of these games are going to be human versus human because we got a recent influx of a lot of human coaches. But this is JP. I always want to say DP, and it's not. It's JP versus Starfinder. Houston's a team to watch in this league this year. I think that JP did a really good job in the offseason of improving the talent at Houston. And this one was a little bit more of a defensive slugfest than I think anyone would have expected. But Houston got off to a pretty good start. If you look at this, Olsen had a really strong game. Starfinder, give him a game or two, and he's pretty much going to probably get them on the right path. So this is one of those that is going to be a little bit harder for me to guess who's going to win the AFC South because you have some really good teams. Rick had a phenomenal offseason with Indianapolis. Tennessee, of course, is a CPU team, but one of the CPU teams I would tell you to take a strong look at if you want to join this league, because they're pretty phenomenal. Um, it was a very close game, went into overtime. Rick managed to win it. Richmond is just one of those quarterbacks who is a very big name in the league, and he had a really good game. 80% completion rate for 419 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. I don't know a coach who wouldn't take that. That was a really strong game out of him. If I'm not mistaken, JP traded with Soa to get Luna. Luna had a really good game. The 2 interceptions, probably want to get those back, but in the end, a win's a win, and that's a good start, especially against a team of Tennessee's caliber. This is Shark versus CPU. Buffalo's a team I would look at if you want to join the league as well. It's a pretty strong team. Shark just thumped the shit out of them. Hicks is without doubt one of my favorite running backs in the league. There's another running back out there that may be a little bit more of a favorite, but Hicks just, I mean, that you can't say anything about that. That's like a God mode type performance. 20 rushes, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then Allman, of course, had a pretty good game too. It was just a complete beatdown by New England. Great job, Shark. The next game is Soa versus DP. DP, of course, made that monster trade in the offseason to go out and get him a running back. Soa is a pretty solid coach, but Miami just didn't show up in this one. Spriggs just went off. Spriggs and Roberts, man. That's a combination. Uh, I think you're going to see DP try to make another trade like he did last time if Spriggs retires. Spriggs has just been an absolute beast of a quarterback his entire time he's been in the league. If I show this to you, just you'll see this. I mean, this guy has had a career. 393 touchdowns. He's thrown for 4,000 yards, probably what 6, 7 times. That's an amazing thing, and he spread the ball very well. So it wasn't one wide receiver that did in Soa and the Dolphins. It was 3 wide receivers. So just a great game. Bryant got off to a pretty good start. He's the running back that DP basically signed all of his picks for. So um, Oakland versus Denver. Prince didn't upload, so he was going to have a hard time with Oakland anyways. Peter is at Oakland. Prince is at Denver, and Peter just demolished them. It was interesting to see Reno not start, but it's good to see that Denham started and actually had a good game. Denham is, of course, the first #1 pick. He was a really strong quarterback out of Ohio State who last year got benched for Reno, who's, of course, the greatest of all time in this league from a quarterback perspective. But it's good to see that Denham bounced back and Peter was able to find a plan for him that would get him started. Grill had a really good game. And then, of course, the 1-2 punch of Leonard and Cochran definitely probably helped Denham quite a bit to have a good game. So just overall, good, solid opening win. That's the game that Peter needs to win in this division. Alt Haben, who's one of our German coaches, played Kansas City. It came close. Kansas City, even though their CPU team is a really good team, they had James for a long period of time, and they beat them in overtime. And again, Brand was one of the big reasons, along with Battaglia, who's a really, really good running back as well. Um, kind of just did them in. But I expect big things out of San Diego. I think Althaven will definitely get it taken care of at some point in the near future. And then, of course, the last game is a NFC West game, which was Los Angeles versus Seattle. These are both CPU teams, both just a straight out shootout. Miller out of LA kind of had a monster game. I think both quarterbacks actually did, to be honest. Rodriguez also had a big game. Uh, Narvaez is I'm really expecting big things out of him. I think he was underdrafted. I think he went in like the 4th or 5th round. It could have been the 3rd. But definitely, these are the two teams that would compete against San Francisco. So San Francisco is going to have an interesting season with so that's kind of what week one looked like. I think there were a couple of surprises. San Francisco losing to Arizona was a big surprise to me. I think that outside of that, I don't think that there really was another surprise. I would say Kansas City and San Diego is a little bit of a surprise, but I got to keep remembering that James really set Kansas City up for success before he left. So, um, from a preview perspective, I've talked about a little bit of this, but Detroit in Minnesota really are my two favorites to be at the make the playoffs. The wild card here is going to be Green Bay with DWK. I just don't know his skill well enough with draft day sports titles, but I will tell you if he plays them anywhere like he plays ball bound, Green Bay will probably be in the playoffs. I really like Carolina a lot. Invisible Witness has done a great job. Just based on what Steve's done in the first week, I think it's going to be Carolina versus Atlanta. Early nod will probably go to Carolina. And then, of course, in the East, I think all roads lead either through the nation's capital or through Dallas. I think both of those are playoff teams with Washington and Dallas. I think if Cable can get his feet under him, I think he's got a squad that can make a run, but I really think it's probably going to be Dallas that wins the East with Washington a close second, and both of them probably nudging for the playoffs. Even though San Francisco lost, I still like Stewart to win this division. LA is going to be a tough series of games for him as well as Seattle. One of the problems with winning your division year over year is you have to play the harder schedule, which means that some teams will be able to creep up. So, but definitely, I think still the NFC's path goes through Detroit. I think Pops has done a great job there, but we'll see how that pans out over the season because if it's not Pops, I think it goes through Dallas with Templar. On the AFC side, Kev has started off really strong. Got to keep an eye on that, but I think the North still leads through Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh didn't do anything in the offseason to get weak, or they actually got stronger. It'll be interesting to see how the season plays out. Even though I beat Cincinnati 44-3, I would tell you that traditionally I struggle against AFC North teams. So keep an eye out on Bio Eagle. It's the first game of the year against a new coach, and he didn't know what to expect, but I do expect him to get stronger as the season goes on. I really am going to keep an eye on the South. There's a lot of really good coaches there. I like what Rick did. I like what DP did. Starfinder is doing a pretty good job over in the college game. So I think this will be a very competitive um, league. I do think the early nod probably goes to Indianapolis with Rick, but I expect DP to be right there. And keep an eye on Tennessee, even as a CPU team. They've got a really strong team. Um, East is going to be New York versus New England. That's no change than any other season. Last year, DP did a really good job of kind of shutting down Shark. I think Shark's out for revenge now. So I'm not going to pick a side here. I think that both teams are in the playoffs. And I think it'll be interesting to see the season they have. New York will be all about Spriggs. I think Bryant's a good running back, but I don't think he's going to be a game changer. I think at New England, it's going to be all about Hicks. So we'll see how that plays out over the season. And then, of course, in the West is down a little bit this year, but all roads lead through Oakland, probably for the whole league. You've got to beat Peter in order to win the championship and say that you're the best because he is the best. But I do like San Diego's chances. Princeton have a good offseason, but we'll see how he bounces back. But Peter and the Raiders are just phenomenal. And it'll be interesting because we have some games coming up that will kind of define how some of this is going to look. If we look at week two, big games here are just some predictions. Miami should beat Chicago. Soa should be able to get back on track. The Jets versus Lions is going to be a really good game. I'm going to go with DP. I like what Spriggs did last week. I think It's going to be hard for Pops to shut him down. So I like the Jets in this game. Green Bay, uh, this is going to be a really good game. It'll kind of define how good DWK is going to do this year. I do like New England. Shark isn't giving me any reason to go against him. He's already out of the gate strong. Minnesota versus Buffalo. I like Rick in this one. He traditionally does well against the CPU. Buffalo's not strongest of teams, so this should be a good bounce back game for Rick. Um, Atlanta versus San Diego. Steve versus Althaben. Uh, I like San Diego in this one, but again, I don't have enough track record to be able to say which of these are the two stronger coaches. I think they both have done a good job with their teams, and it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. Uh, Hands down, Invisible, I'm sorry. Oakland's probably going to win this one, but it'll be how close you can get it. Getting Peter in the beginning of the season is the best chance to get him, especially if you're a new coach. He doesn't know anything about you. And my advice to Invisible is switch it up. Uh, Peter is phenomenal at picking up on your trends and then beating you over the head with them. So I would just switch it up and then figure out a way to to put Denim under pressure, uh, and then just shut down the run. If you can shut down the run, you got a chance against them. But the problem with that is really hard to do, and when you do that, you open yourself up to the pass. And Peter is very good at taking whatever you give him and turning it to gold. I like Prince in this game over Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay kind of sucks, but Prince and Denver should win that one pretty easily. This is a really good game of Templar versus Bio Eagle. Uh, Templar had a pretty good opening game. Bio Eagle lost kind of a heartbreaker. I'm going to go with Templar, but I think this will be really close and it could go either way. Cable versus Pittsburgh. This is Cable versus me. I'm going to go with Pittsburgh in this one. It'll be a close game, but I think that Pittsburgh just has more talent than New York. And I think in the end, that's going to be the difference. I like Don, who's at Philadelphia over Cincinnati. I don't think Cincinnati's going to have a good year. They're not starting Burns at quarterback. The CPU is kind of mismanaging the team. So I think Don's going to be able to capitalize on that and get a win, his first win in the season. This next game is a Beltway Classic. It's Washington versus Baltimore. Um, the two parts really of the DMV, uh, Udo versus Kev. This is a hard one for me to choose. I think that in the end, I think Washington's going to win this one. Kev, you can taunt me if you want, if you win. I just think at this moment that Udo has a slightly better team than Baltimore. But again, Kev is an unknown in this league. So he may very well sneak up and surprise Udo. And if he does, then I need to really worry about them from an AFC North. I'm already worried about Baltimore, candidly, at Pittsburgh. Arizona versus Houston. I expect Houston to win this one, even though Arizona upset San Francisco. Um, I think JP has a very strong squad there, and he'll shut them down defensively. Indianapolis versus LA. This will be a high scoring one, but I like Indianapolis in this one over LA. So I think that Rick will get his second win of the season. Look for Stewart to bounce back against Tennessee, get the first one of the season, and do it pretty well. Starfinder. This one's going to be a little bit harder game, but I do like Jacksonville's ability to bounce back and win against Seattle at home. So Starfinder should get his first win of the season as well. And then this is a CPU game. I think Kansas City's going to win that one easily. If we look at the league leaders, bear in mind this is only week one, so it doesn't really mean much. Even though Miller has like 10 more yards than Spriggs, I would say the definite leader after the first week is really going to be Spriggs. I want to see something real quick. Do they already have it up? Let's look at the awards. I don't want to talk about who's the league leaders at this point. So after week one, I think really it's Spriggs and Hicks. Again, it's just 1 week though. You're going to see Oakland's running back start to pop up. If Denham continues to do what Peter wants him, he'll start popping in. You start seeing some other people as well. Emil Richard doesn't shock me. He's had a good career. But it's really Hicks and Spriggs at this point for MVP. Same thing with offensive MVP. On defense, man, Sousa had a really strong opening game. Definitely keep an eye on him. Riggs, who's um, I want to say he's had a decent career, honestly, and he has. He has just traditionally been a really good cornerback. And it's good to see that he might finally have a coach that'll be able to really strongly utilize his skills. I hate the name Larry Brown. I'm a Pittsburgh fan. I still remember that Super Bowl. So, Rookie of the Year, this will be interesting. It's going to change. Again, we're only in week one, but Alvarez, who was one of the top two picks, definitely didn't do anything to make Kev think that he mispicked. Lackey, who was a first rounder as well, definitely gave me no reason to doubt that pick, even though it's late in the round. And Narvaez, who of course was a third round pick, definitely is showing why he was with 3 touchdowns. On the defensive rookie side of the year side, this one's going to change a lot, but Jack Sneed is kind of saying that I may have misread him a little bit, and he may be right. Michael Perry, someone I was high on, of course I drafted him, and he had a good opening game, even though he's not starting. So that's kind of the recap and a little preview. I do kind of think that this year it's going to probably be either Dallas and Detroit in the title game against Oakland. I'm gonna play it safe. I'm gonna say Oakland's there again. Um, Although Peter doesn't have the easiest of schedule to get there because he's playing a number one schedule, but he does that every year. So and he does good. The key matchups for him now kind of determine whether he's going to win another championship or not is going to really be the Jets game in week 4, uh, Pittsburgh in week 7 because he's got Pittsburgh on the road. Kev could potentially upset him if he's looking forward to me with Pittsburgh. And then after that, he can kind of coast a little bit because I don't think a lot of teams are going to challenge him. The other front runners in the AFC, of course, are Pittsburgh, who uh, has, I think, a little bit harder schedule in some regards because they got to go through the NFC East, where they'll have Dallas, they'll have Washington. But at the same time, the big game for them is week 3 against the Jets on the road, and then, of course, Peter and then Templar in week 9. The Jets, eh, really, they got the hard game this week and then next. That's just a brutal lineup right there, by the way. And then you throw in DWK and JP. Um, if they come through that, I think that they are going to be able to say, I'm on a pretty good trajectory, and now I just got to beat Shark. New England wise, their schedule's not as brutal, I think, because they have a second schedule. Or they finished last year number 2, so they play the number 2s. But they still got Rick in week 9. That's going to be a hard game. They've got JP in week 7. And then, of course, they have the games against the Jets, which will ultimately define how good they're going to do. I think that those are really your front runners in the AFC side of the house. For the NFC, again, I think Pops is still a front runner. So he gets the Jets. This will determine that, followed by really Templar, and then of course he gets Shark in week 5. Those games are going to really largely tell us how good the Lions are going to be this year. If we look at Dallas, again, Dallas, the big games here is going to be week 3 with Detroit, week 9 with Pittsburgh. The good news for Dallas is Templar gets them at home as opposed to having to play them on the road. And then, of course, he does have Kev in week 5 on the road. So it'll be interesting to see how this all kind of plays out. But we're off to a good start. It's definitely showing to be a competitive league. If you want to join, we have some really good teams like Seattle, Tennessee, Chicago still open. Just let me know and I'll put the links in the video. Thank you for your time tonight.